What's going on YouTube? My name is Bro. For this video we are doing episode 19 of the Crunchyroll Reviews series, and this one is going to be taking a look at the sequel series to one of the more acclaimed franchises in the Otome genre, and that would be La Corda, which is, by the way, if I was curious, Italian for the golden string. And the series we are looking at is called Blue Sky, which actually has a bit more of a complicated setup than the original series, which came out, I want to say, back in 2003. So sit back, because this is going to be a good one. Alright, so we have a young girl, and her name, excuse me for a sec, is Kanade Kohinata, and if I mispronounce that, my apologies. As the story goes, one day about 7 years earlier, something happened between her and one particular gentleman, which we don't know about yet, because we don't know who the person is. A few years later, this same person comes by and hears a rather pathetic performance that she gives on stage, and gives her a note which reads the following: Have you reached your limit? But what was the incident that happened 7 years prior? That is the question. Well, this is not answered right away in the series, but what we find out is, well, our dear friend is very good friends with someone, and his name is Kyoya Kisargi. He is the brother of the president of the Seiso Academy, Ritsu, or as I like to call him, Riri Kisargi. And he works for the orchestra club of Seiso Academy. For those who forgot that is the main academy from the original La Corda series. So he, Ritsu, invites Kanade and his brother Kyoya to come to the academy to try and expand their horizons, to be able to find that more infinite, endless blue sky, because the way he looks at it is, it's kind of narrow right now. Well, being how brothers are, you know that Kyoya probably does not take too kindly to this idea, and there's a, if you'll pardon the expression, a conflict between the two brothers about doing things in this school. To be perfectly blunt, Kyoya doesn't really want to participate in anything at the academy. Meanwhile, Kanade kind of does. But she is immediately met with resistance. This is to be expected, because you see, Ritsu decides that they're going to compete in a competition with different schools, and they're going to do an ensemble, a group competition, as opposed to the original series, which was individual. Remember that? Well, in this series, it's a group effort, and Ritsu decided he wanted to put in the best people that he felt would be in there. The two people he put in were, of course, Kyoya and Kanade. This is met with resistance from other members of Seiso Academy, and specifically a young man named Haruto, who plays the cello. I should point out, by the way, that there are 5 members of Seiso Club, and one of them is also Daichi. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Sake. It's almost like saying Sakamaki, but it's like S-A-K-A, well, whatever. We'll call him Daichi. Anywho, you have Daichi, Haruto, Ritsu, or Ritty, and of course Kanade and Kyoya. So those are your 5. Alright, cool. She's immediately met with opposition, and this is where the series starts to get interesting. Or frustrating, depending on the way you look at it. You see, the way they told the story at the very beginning, it was very hard for me to get into the story because I'm listening to a character's mood swings. Because she would be, like, there'd be a point where she'd be happy and then something would happen and instantly, bang, she immediately just goes into some kind of funk. But see, she wears this ring on a necklace, and if it hears really good music, it kind of lights up and creates an illusion. It's a ring that a fairy, or a fata at one time, actually gave Ritty some years ago. And he gave it to Kanade. Alright, cool. Well, these times during the first 6 episodes, when she goes up and down, you kind of don't know how to take it, because it's almost like a constant, and it can happen more than once. Like, one minute she's happy, next minute she's in a funk, then she starts to come back up, and then something brings her back down, but then she comes back up later. And this becomes a problem at first, because like I said, it's in the first 6 episodes, and you want to be able to get behind the character, but because of the rapid ebb and flow with her mood swings, it's almost impossible. And you don't really know what to do and how to take her. It was almost easier when you had Hino-san, Hino Kahogo from the first original series, because you knew outright she didn't want to be in music. She was forced into it, and then she eventually grew into it. In this case, it's a person who was already established in music in some degree, and you would think would be able to have the ability to not be so vulnerable all over the place. So for like the first 6 episodes, you kind of don't know what you're doing. But when you get into the actual competition, episodes 7 through 12, it really starts to get good. Tonight, I really felt like I was really starting to get into the story. And mind you, it's only 12 episodes. So you spend the first half loathing and lamenting the lead character, but you eventually start to get into her and start to get into the ensemble and get into the competition, because she starts to have more of that determination, and she starts to be able to even progress up the ladder as far as who's going to be in the first violin, because that's what they had. They had 2 violins, a viola, and a cello. Haruto plays the cello, by the way. Anywho, so you have their setup. The school, Jinan, one of the students is named Chiaki Togane. Would you care to know who plays him? The same person who played Len Sukamori in the original series, Kisho Taniyama. And speaking of Sukamori, he appears not once but twice in the series. And you don't know how happy I was to see him both times. Especially the second time, because I don't mark out for situations in series usually, but that was one I did because for those who need a bit of a refresher, Len Sukamori is actually the character who I grew to really appreciate in the original series, even though when the series first started, I hated his guts. True fact, by the way. By the way, he's not the only alum from the original series that makes an appearance. Kazuki Hihara actually makes a reappearance early in the series, but he only makes one. Len makes two. Both times I will tell you he's playing Ave Maria. And the second time I heard it and I was like, no, wait a minute. I heard it the first time. The second time I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute. No, he couldn't be back. What would you be doing going back? And then he pops up and you're like, whoa! But yeah, getting to see him was a real treat, to be honest. Now, I want to get into... we'll talk about the animation a little bit, because it was actually really well done for what... put it this way, it's not fair to compare it, but if you compare it to the animation from the original series, oh, it's night and day. It trumps it. If you look at it just on the idea of 2014, 2015 animation, it's actually very good, and I enjoyed it. The character development is hard because, like I said, because of the emotional roller coaster that you go on with Kanade, it's very hard to know how to really take her at first, but you eventually start to really see the maturation of her in the second half of the series. And the people she meets throughout the series, such as Yukihiko Yagisawa and a couple of his friends like Arata from Shiseiken High School, that was awesome. Then of course you have Reiji. Well, she meets him and she's kind of freaking out at first, and eventually is revealed why he has a bit of a disdain for her. Then you have Sei Amamea, I believe is how you pronounce it, who is voiced by the incomparable Mamoru Mayano, and one of the main reasons why I actually decided we were going to do this series, because I actually wanted to get to hear him yet again. And what you have by the start of the second half and the end, is a very emotional and very well-written story. And you have a connection between a lot of different characters. I will say that for the first half of the series, I probably was more into some of the characters from the other schools, not least of which was Togain, because of Kisho. What can I say? I'm a sucker for the for that voice actor. But by the end, like I said, with the character development, it actually turns into a very well-developed character, and one you can really get into and dig. All of them, actually. Which brings you to the emotional part of it, the emotional connection, which you do make by the end. Like I said, it's hard in the very beginning because of the way they treat Kanade. And I sat there and I'm like, why would you do that for the first half? Like, it's like I said when I did my mid-series on my Tumblr. The first half of the series is a marginal pass, but the second half is really, 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 really good because they don't really lollygag anymore. So this brings us to the question, well, how do you really rate this show then? How can you? Let's try this. if you can get past the idea that the lead character, the female lead character, which, by the way, I enjoy female leads sometimes a lot more than I enjoy male ones, but if you can get past the idea that the character's going to be on a goddamn yo-yo for the first 6 episodes, which is not good, because it really takes you out of her, I think, then you're going to be in for one hell of a story once you get towards 7 through 12. The problem is, if you can't get past that, you're going to miss the really, really good stuff towards the end. Because you have to go through the first 6 episodes and all the drama to really get to the unified front and the unified team and see where they're going to go towards the very end. Do you see what I'm saying? So this brings to the question, where does it actually go as far as being a pass or fail? I'm going to recommend this series. However, here's my caveat. Go watch the original first, then go watch this one. The only reason I say that is because there are at least 2 characters that make an appearance and one that is mentioned, so you have 3 actually, from the first series that are in this series that you wouldn't know if you didn't watch the first one. Also, in the first series, you had Mamoru Mayano appear in Second Passo, the 2-episode OVA. So there's that to think about also. But I do recommend that you go check out this series. Just go check out the first one to get a better understanding of the structure of Seiso. Alrighty? So, until then, my friends, I will see you next week. Next week we'll be doing the final review for Music Month, which will be Your Lie in April. And I will talk to you then. Until then, my friends, take care.